Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Welcome to Congregation Kol Ami, also to all the people who are out there online viewing what we're doing. What can I say? It's literally the day after Yom Kippur. Isaiah predicted this moment in his prophecies where he spoke of how there would be a Shar Yeshuv, a saving remnant who would show up. And we have just a little past the minion number here. So you are the Shar Yeshuv that was predicted in ancient times that allows us to conduct the service. We're going to begin with Tanya leading us in a little nigun, and then we're going to go from there.
Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai.
So it's my delight to be able to invite up Melissa Trapani, just recently coming back from her triumphant food drive, to come on up and kindle the lights of Shabbat. Now we're going to be in Mishkan Tefillah. So we're starting on page 120. If you have Mishkan Tefillah, if not, just follow along with us.
As the Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'nitzvanu lahavdi ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Amen.
So, time now to check in and to see how we are in the post-high holiday situation that we find ourselves in. So, want to hear about the good and blessing of last week. I'll begin with myself. I'm forgiven. So got that going for me, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. Anybody else have a good and blessing to report? Yes, Melissa. Okay. It is, and it's good to do a drive this time of year when most of the North Texas community isn't really thinking about that yet. So that's great. Did you want to add something, TJ? Oh, okay. Do we really want to be broadcasting this to the? Yeah. Okay, very good. Elliot had a date. So, all right. A mother's good and blessing. All right. How about for you, Casey?
My baby sister made it to Israel safe and is all settled in North Hasharon, in an apartment, and is already full.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we hope she enjoys her Aliyah. Is this a permanent thing?
No, just another soccer.
Oh, that's right. She plays soccer. That's right. Very good. Anybody else? So I do have a few things on our list here. We have a couple of anniversaries, Tom and Maxine Collins. We want to wish them Mazel Tov, and Steve and Brenda Irwin. On top of that, we have a couple of birthdays last week. Bruce Cohen, Cindy Krause, Mark Davis, and Sarah Lieberman. So we're delighted for all of them. And we're looking forward to even more good blessings in the week ahead. And we have a couple more folks. It's the Tells. That's great to see you guys. So, and with that, I am going to make sure. Hold on. Yeah, we have a whole automatic lock system here. And so we keep our security tight here at Kol Ami. All right, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to begin with our Kabbalat Shabbat. And I'm going to ask you to turn to page 130. And we begin with Psalm 95 in English. Come, let us sing joyously to Adonai and raise a shout for our rock and deliverer. Let us come into God's presence with praise. Let us raise a shout for God in song. For Adonai is a great God, the great God, great ruler of all the divine beings. Would everyone join me on the next page? In God's hands are the depths of the earth, and the peaks of the mountains are God's. God's is the sea, God made it, and the land which God's hands fashioned. Come, let us bow down and kneel, bend the knee before Adonai our Maker, for Adonai is our God, and we are the people that God tends, the flock in God's care. Oh, if you would but heed God's charge this day. We continue now with Psalm 97, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to go down to the on our page. It's page 132, and we're going to be doing Or Zeruach, the third paragraph.
Or Zeruach LaTzadik u'Yishrei lev simcha. Or Zeruach LaTzadik u'Yishrei lev simcha. Or Zeruach LaTzadik u'Yishrei lev simcha. u'Yishrei lev simcha. Or Zeruach LaTzadik u'Yishrei lev simcha. u'Yishrei lev simcha. La la la.
We continue with Psalm 29 on page 136. A Psalm of David. Ascribe to Adonai, O divine beings. Ascribe to Adonai glory and strength. Ascribe to Adonai the glory of God's name, and bow down to Adonai, majestic in holiness. The voice of Adonai is over the waters, and the God of glory thunders. Adonai over the mighty waters. The voice of Adonai is power. The voice of Adonai is majesty. The voice of Adonai breaks cedars. Adonai shatters the cedars of Lebanon. God makes Lebanon skip like a calf, and Syrian like a young ox. We continue now with Lecha Dodi on page 138. As always, we do stanzas 1, 4, 5, and 9.
Lecha Dodi likra kala, bnei Shabbat nekavela. 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 Shamor וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל כמיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, שם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי לקרא כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקרא כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלחם, כי היא מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה בנחם ושילה. לך דודי לקרא כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקרא כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקרא כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקרא כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצוך עולה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה. לך דודי לקרא כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקרא כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
We continue now with the Hatzi Kaddish on page 144.
יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה,
Amen.
בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בגלה ובזמן קריב במהרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי לקודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה. תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה במהרו amen.
Please rise if able for the Baruch on page 146.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. We
continue on the bottom of page 149. At the top of 149. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and seasons glide. Your breath guides the sails and the stars. Creator of the tide and time, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, amcha achavta, Torah, mitzvot, hukim u'mitzvatim, otanu limadta. Everlasting love you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai, our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Page 152, we continue with the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, וחיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרת להורות על ידיך, וחיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיהם. אני אדוני אלוהיהם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Page 157, middle of the page, if you would read responsively with the indentations. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt, we were delivered. At Sinai, we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets, instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. And though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. And then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. Mi chamocha.
Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נרדד בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. מלכותך ובניך בוקי הים לפני משה, זה אלי אנו ואמרו, זה אלי אנו ואמרו, Adonai Himloch Le'olam Vaed. Adonai Himloch Le'olam Vaed. Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedad b'kodesh, nora tehilot osef pele, nora tehilot osef pele.
In the lower half of page 161. Grant us a place to rest, Adonai our God, and bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai haforeh sukat shalom, aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. We come now to our celebration of Shabbat, and it's Vishamru on the top of page 162.
Vishamru b'nei Israel et ha-Shabbat, lasot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam. Vishamru b'nei Israel et ha-Shabbat, lasot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam. Beini ubein, Bnei Israel, odi leolam. Vishamru bnei Israel et ha-Shabbat, lasot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. Vishamru b'nei Israel et ha-Shabbat, lasot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. Vishamru b'nei Israel et ha-Shabbat, lasot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam.
We're going to continue now with Tefillah, and because we don't have the high holiday inserts, we can chant it like we normally do. So if you're able, please rise. We're going to start on page 164, and we're going to be in the even numbered pages. Adonai sefatai titahu Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, El Hagadol, Hagibor, Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel, Hasidim Tovim, Rekonei Hakol, Vezocher Hasteo, Vima'ot, Umevi Gulan, Livnei B'neihem, Laman Shemo Rahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach Magin, Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Avraham, Bezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol Tara V'Hoshia, מחלקי חיים וחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, צומק נוכלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מכמוך בעל גבורות, ומדום אליו, מלך מנהיג ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, נאמן לחיות העול. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יקר לך סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. Please be seated, everyone. We continue on the bottom of page 172. Our God and God of our ancestors, be pleased with our rest. Sanctify us with your mitzvot and grant us a share in your Torah. Satisfy us with your goodness and gladden us with your salvation. Purify our hearts to serve you in truth. In your gracious love, Adonai our God, grant as our heritage your holy Shabbat, that Israel, who sanctifies your name, may rest upon it. Praise to you, Adonai, who sanctifies Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. We turn now to page 175. Middle of the page, you are with us in our prayer, in our love and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and to do your will. You are the still clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt makes us tremble, when anxiety makes us shake, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel, all who seek you, may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levadcha be'ira na'avod. Top of page 177. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer our thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, u'lecha ne'eh lahodot. We're now going to close out with Shalom Rav, and then we're going to take a few moments for our own silent prayers and meditations.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adom lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adom lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam, tasim leolam. Ose shalom bimroma, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru v'meru amen. Ose shalom bimroma, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru v'meru amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
So, of course, Yom Kippur finished last night, and I'm sure you're all wondering, what does the rabbi do at the end of Yom Kippur? And the answer is, I went home, I ate dinner, I went to bed. And then I got up this morning, and when I should be writing a sermon, I was drinking coffee, eating ho-hos, and playing with my dog. So I don't have a sermon tonight, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to talk, because rabbis talk. And in fact, I'm going to talk about something that I think was quite interesting to our experience, because for 2 years now, we have been gradually transitioning to these two books, Mishkan HaNefesh, which is our new Machzor. We're a slow adopter. It's been out for about 5 years, but we've caught up with it now. And this was the first full usage of it during services this year. So I want to get some feedback from you and hear about your reactions. Before I do, I want to explain a little bit about the history of this particular prayer book. All right. So somewhere around the 8th, 9th century, the rabbis of Babylon composed something called Seder Rav Amram, which is the first official prayer book. And it was hand copied and sent around Europe and North Africa, and it became the foundation for all Jewish prayer. Now, along the way, during that same period, Jews started composing what are called piyutim, or liturgical poems. Now, there are liturgical poems for every occasion, but the great majority of them sort of center on the high holy days in the same way that most Christians, their favorite hymns are all Christmas hymns, right? It all just seems to naturally attract that attention. But we need to understand that until the printing press, most Jews never held a prayer book in their hand, right? Whether it was for the high holidays or for Shabbat. The leader of the congregation, maybe a few wealthy individuals who could afford to hire someone else to copy a Siddur for them would have one, but otherwise people listened and learned and responded according to that, which is why we're a liturgical tradition even to this day. Around the 12th century, there was something called the Maxor Vitri, which tried to outline all of the structures of all Jewish prayers, and that worked. And so the idea of what we say on the High Holy Days became a little more fixed. Now, once the printing press was invented, that started making things a little more exciting. Now, let's go to America. All right. We didn't have an American Maxor for quite some time. What we tended to do was we got these published one. This is one, Adler's Synagogue Service for the Day of Atonement. And it doesn't even have a date in it. I think this was printed just before the beginning of the 20th century. It's a little bit of a haphazard affair. The English translation is kind of weird. And so it went. Now, the first true American Maxor was the Reform Movement Union Prayer Book for the High Holy Days. And there were two little ones, if you'll remember. And of course, that was part of the German Jewish slimming down of the way we observed high holidays. However, the Reform movement in the 20th century increasingly got more and more Jews who joined us from the Eastern European tradition, and they thought that the Union Prayer Book was a little thin. They wanted to spend more time in the synagogue, especially during Yom Kippur. So what we came out with was the Gates of Repentance. Now, conservative Jews were first using, this is Harlow, and before that, I think it was Berman. And they've always had a fairly chunky, substantial Maxor, but in the 1980s, that was the first time Reformed Jews. We had an afternoon service. We had Yisker and Ne'ilah, much larger. And so we have sort of come back to embrace a little bit of the East European tradition in that regard. Now this, we went whole hog. It's 2 volumes, all right? And it is full. Now, I'd say most of the Maxor, traditional Maxor is here in one form or another. However, we've got also a lot of additional readings, supplementary readings, alternative readings, all sorts of things going on. So I'm curious just to hear, you are my sample, you're my test group, to get your impressions of our service and what you thought of the new Maxor, and what were your reactions? Who has something they want to share? Mark. Yep. Right. It's a lot of page changing. If we tried to do everything in the prayer book, it would go on well past a day. But yeah, so we have to skip quite a bit. Right. Yeah, and there's very little instruction in it. It doesn't instruct you what to do. I have to do that for you. So it allows different congregations, in theory, to do it their own way, the way they've always done it. But it does at times leave us hanging a little bit. So I can agree with that criticism. What else, Don?
You said this one's 5 years old.
It's now 5 years old.
So we can expect in 2 or 3 years.
No, I would give it at least a decade. I mean, remember that the Gates of Repentance was published in 1980. So that got a good 30-year run. But it is true that the Reform movement in particular, we like to update our prayer books. Yeah, and we have to fund the CCR press. Okay, be cynical about it. But it's also the case, if you can recall, that Gates of Repentance has a lot of very 1970s things in it. You know, it it makes reference to napalm because we were still thinking about Vietnam and things like that. So, and actually one of the things that was said about this Maxor is let's try and be contemporary, but not so fixated on the time when it's published. So there was a good effort put into that. But yeah, so we do have to. I remember the 1940 Union Prayer Book used to have a prayer for those who labor in the dark, referring to union miners, right? So it's always been the reform movement to tend to put a little bit of contemporary themes in it, but those things do become outdated within a couple of decades. What else? Yes.
So I noticed that there was less people going up on the beam road.
Yes.
Is that because of the paragraph?
No, that was a decision by us to try and streamline things a little bit, and especially since many people who we might want to honor weren't going to come. They didn't want to, and in fact, a lot of the people that we invited preferred to watch online. So that was a reflection of our circumstances rather than anything dictated by the prayer book. Yes.
I did like for this group, the candles.
Yes. There are a couple of interesting new innovative rituals in there. And one of them, as you described, is Yisker, where we have the lighting of 7 candles with readings from the Psalms and other reflections. I like it too. In the Gates of Prayer, it felt a little bit like you were just doing one reading after another, and there wasn't necessarily a, how do I want to say it, a trajectory to the process, whereas that, I think, both allows us to include people who've lost someone in the year, but also makes us feel like we're following a path in the prayers. And sometimes that's a little invisible in Jewish prayer. Why are we doing this now? And so I like that one too, and I'm glad we were able to make it work. Other thoughts or reflections? Yes, I just have to tell you that it was going to be a responsive reading. Again, they're trying to give us maximum flexibility, but you know, if you're used to having the italics tell you where you're supposed to read, it feels more impromptu, and I understand that. And yeah, yes, go ahead.
Could we incorporate somebody to be up there with you?
The have a page boy,
Yeah.
right? Right. You know, I've thought about that. I've also, thought about getting one of those little placards, you know, like they have in churches. Instead of just saying hymn 96 and hymn 47, we're going to be doing these pages, but it wouldn't quite work. It's it is a problem, or I would call it a feature of both Mishkan Tefillah and Mishkan HaNefesh, that they've put so much supplementary material in there that you're inevitably going to have to be skipping things. And that sort of leads to that page calling kind of thing. Yes. I like a lot of the readings. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Right. And one of the things I do look forward to is varying the readings from year to year. My initial strategy is maybe a 3-year cycle where we'll do, you know, core prayers like Unatana Tokef and things like that. And then we'll have alternative readings. And then the second year we'll do these. And then the third year we'll do the others. And then we'll come back to the original again. Yes.
I'm interested in how somebody who would use the electronic version, how they like that. Yeah, I did that last year.
Okay, so there's a flip book that you can get for free, but you can also get the whole thing for like $20 from the CCAR. And I'm pretty sure with that, you can just punch into the page you want to go to and it'll just automatically take you there. So look, we are moving into an electronic age, and we more slowly than other congregations. I mean, there has been around for a little while, and we've experimented in the past with visual tefillah, which is actually having a screen and having the prayer projected on it. Okay, so that may not be, that works very well. So that's all we need is a donor to give us 150, 200 iPads. Here we go. We're good. Any other thoughts? Any other reactions to the way the services were conducted this year? Yes, Mark. Yeah, that's all right. So yeah, of course we rearranged for the purposes of not having such a COVID friendly environment. We went to individual prayer leaders, which I thought worked very well. You know, as it turns out, when you're doing prayers, for the most part, you don't really have to know much more than your cues. We did do something a little different. For some reason, when I declared we're going to be doing a Vinu Malkeinu, a couple of our song leaders immediately went into the climatic piece, but that was probably because I didn't explain enough. Usually we read and then sing. This year we sang and then read, but these are just little choreography things and they're of no great import. Yes, Joanne. Good, good. I'm glad that worked. I'm glad that worked. All right, well, we're going to be figuring out, continuing to learn. Next year, you're going to have slightly different readings than you had this year in a lot of places. Though, again, I tend to focus on a core of things that people either know or expect to hear on the high holidays, and then putting in some alternative readings on what would be, I don't want to call them less essential readings, but the not the pivotal readings that everyone's so familiar with from the high holy days. Yes, Don.
I think we need to have a search for finding people who
All right, so you and I and Bruce and Steve are of a cadre of people who used to hoist the Torah all the time. And let's be honest, we're getting older. You're right. That's right. So we need to find some more people who will be the Magbia. It is also the case that, of course, the way that Ashkenazi Jews have always done this is very acrobatic. The lifting of the Torah, turning around and displaying it. It's very dramatic. And it's lovely, but at a certain point, it can be problematic, especially with our bigger Torah. And so actually this year, I had a cunning plan. And it turned out that I didn't have a wood drill bit big enough to make my cunning plan work. I was going to create a temporary frame that allowed two people to lift it up and show it. It would have been ornamental, but it turned out the wood bits that I had at home were not satisfactory. But next year I have a cunning plan for how we can display the biggest Torah. But you're right, we do. We need more people. All right. I don't know. How are you feeling, Eric? You had your shoulder worked on. Never mind. All right. All right. So maybe we'll get some hardy women in here. Melissa? There we go. There we go. All right. Well, thank you all for your feedback, and please continue to offer your reflections on this so that we know how to best hone what we're doing in the future to both provide some novelty, but also the comfort that comes with hearing the traditional prayers and the traditional meditations that we all associate with the high holy days. So thank you all. And with that, it's time for announcements. And did we decide which officer was doing these announcements? It is you. Not a huge number of announcements. Okay, that's fine. I had one on my-
Give you a break. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
1.75 announcements. Mine's a 0.75. The annual CKA potluck Sukkot dinner. It is coming up. Sisterhood would like to invite the whole congregation to their annual CKA potluck Sukkot dinner outside under the sukkah at CKA on Sunday, September 19th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. We are asking everyone to bring a dairy dish. Sisterhood will provide drinks and the paper products, plates, napkins, cups, forks, knives, etc. If your dish needs to be hot, please bring it hot. There will not be time to warm it. Join us as we shake the etrog and lulav. We will also have a surprise activity. We hope you make plans to join us. My 0.75. We were on a religious school break and it starts back up this Sunday if you have religious school age children. Misha Berach. While we think of people who are in need of prayers, I legitimately don't know what page it is in the blue book. I'm sorry, but
Page 40.
on the back, in the blue
Oh,
book
no,
too.
blue book, you're right. Use the back of your pamphlet.
Does anyone have a name of somebody that they'd like to add to the Misha Berach list this week? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Matt Hampton and his entire family.
Thank you. Back of the sheet, not page 40, because you don't have that book.
Mishe berach avotenu mekor havracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishe berach imotenu mekor havracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
I realized I didn't read names off the list because my head's in Monday right now. So I'm going to say those because the prayer still counts. May the ones who blessed our ancestors and the ones we shared also bless Harry Anthony, Eli Arts, Howard Bloom, Joyce Bloom, Natalie Bavino, Maxine Collins, Sandy Cook, Dave Cook, Jerry Dietz, Gordon Ellison, Tammy Ferris, Debbie Freed, Michael Griffith, Ken Hirschman, Jody Hoffman, Joshua Holcomb, Deb Kaufman, Dwight Kirkwood, Lauren Koenig, Alex Koenig, Sandy Lenzner, Herbert Paley, Paul Redwood Jr., Sandy Garber Rubin, Adrian Sandler, and Meyer Schuessler. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Well, Don, you and I may no longer be able to lift the Torah so easily. We can still open the ark. So would you come on up here and help me with the ark? We're going to be on page 586. That's right. Please rise, everyone. We're on the middle of the page, folks. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tefu l'yotzer b'reshit, shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu pehem, v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam. V'nachnu kolim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamachim hakadosh baruch shehu notei shamayim v'yosei haaretz u'moshav yikaro b'shamayim ima'ah. Ushkina tuzo, v'go meroni, Hu Eloheinu Eno, Emet Eloheinu et esulato, kakatu v'torato, v'yadam hayom, v'hashevota elavecha, ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim, b'shamayim imad, ve'al haaretz, Please be seated. We take time now to think of those individuals who have been so important to our lives but are no longer with us. We take the time to speak their names and summon their memory. And those of us who are not immediately mourning for someone, we show our sympathy by joining together as a community to recite Kaddish. I'm going to ask you all to please rise. And what we have, does anybody have Shiva? Anybody with someone in the past 7 days? For Shloshim, we have Donald Gary Shapp, the brother of Helena Shapp Dossie. And we also have Patricia Dukar, the mother of Stephen Dukar. Is anybody else? Thank you. Our yard sites this week are Michael Eber, Jonathan Elahany, Paul Fromm, Nettie Merkler, Jason Starr, and Phil Teitelbaum. Anybody else have a yard site? Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in Kaddish, forgive me. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol beit Israel, v'galal b'zman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shmei dekudsha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, demiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah mim shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Osei shalom b'mroma, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who are bereaved and comfort all the grieving among us. And let us say, please be seated. So how would you like to conclude tonight? S-I-9, and you can find that on page 643 at the top of the page. I lift up my eyes to the mountains, from whence comes my help? My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth.
Shamayim v'aretz, Ezri, Me'im Adonai, Oseh Shamayim v'aretz, Esa'enai el heharim, Me'ayin yavo Ezri, Esa'enai el heharim, Me'ayin yavo Ezri.
And a motzi. I turn the Kiddush over to Tanya.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratza banu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'ratzon hinkid lanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom tehillah lemikarei kodesh Zeher letziat Mitzrayim, ki banu bacharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol hamim, ve'shabbat kodshecha, ve'ahava u'ratzon, Hinchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen. L'chaim.
Baruch
Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi
Lechem min haaretz.
Amen. Thank you.
And for all the best.